you have to make sure you're still in those trenches fighting on a daily basis so that you can understand what the agents are facing in their transactions and trying to put deals together, and that the customer really understands.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Billion Dollar Banker podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Perrone, and we're so excited that you've joined us here again today. As you guys know, we're a show built for high achievers by high achievers. And today we're speaking to the top 1% in his industry. And I could tell you this, if there's ever an opportunity to listen to anyone that's in the top 1% of any industry in America, it's time to sit back, listen, take some notes, and hopefully get some takeaways here. Today, we have the one and only DJ Ten Hoeve, who is a top producing real estate strategist, team leader, and founder of Ten Hoeve Advisory. Very highly respected full service real estate group in New Jersey that consistently ranks the top 1% of agents nationwide. Just absolutely amazing. DJ's team has 2 decades of experience serving all types of buyers, sellers, investors, builders across all of Central Jersey, and DJ's really built an incredible reputation for delivering exceptional results. Obviously, right? You only get to the top 1% by doing that. DJ, welcome to the show today.
I appreciate being here. Thank you, Nicole.
Well, we're really excited to have you join us. And a lot of our listeners, DJ, are people in the real estate business and a lot of people that are looking to achieve more, within their personal lives or within their business. So I just kind of want to jump right in. I remember when we were first coordinating on scheduling, you had said to me, hey, between 9 and 12, that's my time that's blocked for outbound prospecting. Yeah. I want to start by, first of all, I was like, wow, everyone needs to be like this guy, including myself. Just such discipline there that I just took away from that moment. Tell us about what drives your philosophy on sales, especially in this relationship-driven business like real estate.
I appreciate that. Yeah. It's funny because my need for time blocking and really keeping my calendar tight has gotten more intense, I guess, the deeper I've gotten into my business. When I first got into business, this was a part-time job for me because I was trying to start a second career while I had a primary job that I was already working 40 hours a week in. So I didn't have the ability to kind of dedicate those lead gen hours in the morning because I was working another job at the time. Thankfully, 18 years later, we've built a really good business, but I still do what I should have done from the very beginning if I didn't have another career, right? If I had just started in real estate out of the gate, I would have hopefully mentored under somebody that would have taught me to do things the way that we teach and mentor other people to do it, which is really to procure those hours in the morning for generating new business and then sustain the business you have in the afternoon. To answer your question simply as to what drives me in sales, I don't know what it is. It's in me. It's just something that I have. And it's the oddest thing because I never considered myself a salesperson. I tell this story often where my college roommate became a really good buddy of mine junior year of high school. We were both getting recruited for baseball. We became roommates in college, still lifelong friends. And he and I were polar opposite. He was like the gift of gab guy. He would just schmooze his way into anything he wanted. And I was the complete opposite. I'm a complete introvert. So nobody believes that about me in life now because I have to be extroverted for business, but I hate talking to people otherwise.
Wow.
So I was in a course in college with him. And we both took the same test. I think we both basically got the same grade on the exam. And he went up at the end of the class and schmoozed his way into getting a better grade on the exam. And I never got out of my chair. And I was so pissed at him that was even a possibility to be able to go and talk his way into getting a better grade rather than it just being objective. Mm-hmm. That I kind of always had this feeling of sales was this dirty thing and you were convincing people to do something that was in your best interest, but not in somebody else's. So I never really looked at myself that way. And then graduated college, went to work in a marketing company, left that job, went to work in sales for a pharmaceutical company. And I was able to, in those, I guess it was 13 years I was with that company, but really in probably the first 3 to 4 years, I was able to figure out that I actually did enjoy sales, but not in the way that I thought sales, the bad sales that I had in my head. I formed this idea about sales, that sales is about getting the person who's working with you to the goal that they want to get to. Your job as the salesperson is just to remove the roadblocks and get them to the goal that they want to get to. And a lot of those roadblocks are generally put in place by the person who's seeking the goal. So especially in real estate, my job isn't to convince you to buy a house that you don't want to buy. I'll never have business because you'll never come back and buy another one, or the transaction will never get to the finish line. You're coming to me because I want to buy a house in these two towns between this price range and this price range to solve this problem for my family. And as humans, we tend to get scared consciously or subconsciously of getting to what we really want. And we throw up all these things to get in our own way. I think that that's our job as salespeople, is to help that person get out of their own way and solve a lot of the problems for them to just make happen what it is that they're looking to make happen. So I think it was a bit of a change in the idea of what sales was for me that got me to a place where I actually love what I do. And I love telling people I'm a salesperson now, because my definition of what a salesperson is very different from what I used to think it was.
What an incredible way to start off this podcast, because I do think it starts with that mindset, right? I mean, obviously you have this innate desire to be successful. You have this ambition that's flowing through you that you're not really sure where that resonates from,
Right.
but ultimately, yeah, changing your perception on what is sales, because you do hear a lot of people say, I'm not a salesperson. Well, you're not the negative connotation of a salesperson who's pushy and persuasive, but when you're thinking about sales from the right context, being in service, helping people uncover what their needs truly are, I think a lot of people in sales will move from A to Z, right? Rather than really trying to be consultative and integral through that process. So that's a big
Yeah.
takeaway, because I'm sure there's a lot of salespeople out there today saying, why am I not achieving the results? And maybe there's a mindset shift that's needed.
Are you transactional or are you relational, right? Are you trying to just solve as many problems in the day as you possibly can for as many people? I don't remember which book it was that I read it from, but the more problems you can solve, the faster, the more money that will come to you, the more success that will come to you. Because if you don't worry about the money, if you just worry about helping people, the money follows.
Absolutely. So talk to me about, you have a team now at your company. I mean, there's obviously, you have a daily rigor and structure within your business that's pretty disciplined. What is the routines and the habits of the top 1% look like?
I think you'd be surprised that if you look within the top 1% of real estate agents nationwide, they probably don't have a tremendous amount of discipline, which is really surprising to me, right? Because I'll go on panels or I'll go to these big conferences and they'll ask me, what does my day look like? Which is extremely structured. And then we'll have somebody who does 3 or 4 times the amount of business I do. And they're like, yeah, no, that's not me at all. I just kind of wake up and I just kind of take whatever falls in my lap. I don't know that I could operate that way because it doesn't give me any sort of predictability to what my business is. I'm also just the type of person that doesn't work well without having some sort of a structure. My background's in competitive sports. I played baseball all the way up until college. So I think that's part of what makes me want to continually succeed more and strive for more, is I don't feel like I've reached my full potential yet. But no matter how they do it, any top producer in any industry is successful at doing three things: finding new business, keeping the business they have, and getting business out of the people they've already serviced to want to give more business back to them. So whether they take a formal structure of doing it the way I do, which is, being on the phone for the first 2 hours of the day and making sure I'm procuring new relationships and then servicing the people I already have, and then trying to provide more value after the deal's already closed so that you want to refer future business and all of that. They may not take a formal structure of it the same way, but I guarantee you the way they approach their day and the way they approach their business still hits those three buckets, just in a way that maybe feels less intentional or less planned.
Yeah, I love how you simplify it, because I think a lot of times we overcomplicate it, right? And that may be what prevents us from, starting to put a plan together, put a schedule together. It's one of those things where once you get your mindset in this space of service, I think you get motivated to pick up the phone in the morning, because when someone speaks to DJ Ten Hoeve, it's going to be something that is going to be helpful for them, that you're there in service to provide them with something. Now, when you're thinking about, you obviously transition industries, you left something that was probably a little bit more stable, I presume, for something that was really variable.
Yeah.
So, talk to us about the difference between, because there's a lot of agents out there today that have achieved becoming a top producer, but now are trying to scale their business, trying to grow it, trying to create a team. When did you make that switch? And what do you think the key ingredients are to be a great leader?
I don't know that I have the answer to that, to be honest with you, because I think I have a lot of growth to still achieve as a leader. I'm a very successful solopreneur because I grew up in a sport. I was a pitcher on a baseball team. Like the whole kind of everything kind of like landed with me. So I've always approached business and life as just put it on my back. I got it. I'll take us across the finish line. And that doesn't translate when you're running a team, running a brokerage, right? You have to succeed through others. So for me, the hardest part for me as I've built a team is letting people fail. And I think that if I were to look back at the last we've been in business 18 years, but let's say that I really focused on the team for the last 8 or so. I would say most of the failures that have happened were agents who weren't successful or successful as they could have been, or the team wasn't as successful as it could have been. That comes back to me, and I own that. It's probably that I had my hands too tight on the reins of trying to let people fail and letting people have the side effects and the consequences that come along with not necessarily doing things the right way. I tend to be such a perfectionist that I want to solve for all of those problems so that something can't go wrong. And that's not necessarily a productive environment for people to learn, right? So it's interesting because where I just came from, why I'm sweating, was I ran through the door right before we started the podcast. I was out with one of our agents doing what we call the challenge, which is any new agent who joins our team, not the brokerage, in order to qualify to get leads from our business that we're paying or investing, or people who are repeat clients and doing business with me, I have to feel comfortable with you as that agent, knowing what to do and how to service that client correctly and not screw up that relationship that I lose that business forever. And likewise, you as a new agent, whether you're in the business for no months or 2 years, you probably want to have some confidence that you can actually take care of this the right way and not screw up that opportunity. So what we created a few years back was this thing called the challenge, which is at 8 weeks into a 12-week training program that we have, you've learned enough about the nuts and bolts about servicing a real estate transaction that you should be able to run a fictitious scenario with me as the actual buyer. So once you've gotten to that point, you get a phone call from me or my wife during that 9th week in training, and we pretend to be a fake buyer with a fake name and fake search criteria and all of that. And that agent has to walk us through from that inbound phone call all the way to an accepted written offer to start attorney review at the end of that fake transaction. And they have to do every step along the way that they're graded on. Did you put the person in the CRM? Did you follow up with them when you sent them properties to take a look at? Did you text them to make sure that they got it? So literally, we're pressure testing everything that that agent has to do in a safe environment before they have the opportunity to go screw it up with a real client where it matters. The money matters to the agent, the money matters to the client, especially.
Mm-hmm. I love hearing how, there's a lot of people in business, being in mortgage banking for almost 20 years, managing, leading, recruiting. It's a part of what I do. I see a lot of people that have been doing this for a long time that are still doing the same things they've always done, which is good in some ways, but have never really gotten to that point where you say, like, you're kind of a perfectionist. You don't want anyone to mess anything up. It's very hard to let go of that control. And then also, if you can get yourself to the point where it's okay, I'm going to let go of the control, then it's a lot of time, effort, and energy to train that team to operate the way that you expect them to. So if you were talking to agents right now today that are at a point where they're like, this is all I can handle. I can't handle anymore. I can't get through this invisible ceiling here. What would your advice to them be on the next step they need to take to create the team that they need to create to handle all of the opportunity?
Great question. And I think too many people have wanted to build teams without really understanding why should you have a team, or is it the right fit for you? They've kind of become like the buzzword, right? Teams have kind of replaced brokerages for a lot of reasons where there's not a lot of value that most traditional brokerages are bringing to the table anymore. And a team is providing a lot of what that used to be from a brokerage's perspective, from a training, a support, accountability, lead sources. And I think that a lot of new agents benefit greatly from being on a team because you're going to scale, you're going to be able to get into production and learn failure faster by just having more transactions under your belt, and a team can provide you that. From an agent who's deciding to build a team, I guess my question to you would be, if you've hit that point of your threshold that you can't create more business because there's no more hours in the day, what do you want your business to look like in 5 years and 10 years? That will dictate, is a team the right way to go, or is just leverage the right thing to get at this point? And I think there's a really distinct difference between those two things, because a traditional real estate team, there are a variety of salaried and non-salaried roles where there's salespeople you're managing and mentoring, there's support staff that are doing, HR and operations inside of things like that. And all those people need to be trained, and then they need to train the people underneath them. You might be doing 15 transactions or 20 transactions a year, depending upon the part of the country you're in. And that may be your cap of what you can do with the number of hours you have with your family and all of that. And my suggestion at that point is, unless you really want to build a business of 30, 40 people, your right first step is probably just to hire a VA, hire a virtual assistant, or hire a physical assistant to get somebody to do all the non-dollar producing activities that are now still on your plate. You need to create more units and volume in the same number of hours. And writing contracts, writing listing agreements, being present for photography, none of that stuff is dollar producing activities for you anymore. You need to give that off to somebody else. And when they've done all that for you and you're still capped and you went from, let's say, 16 to 17 units a year, now you're at 22 to 25. Now you add another assistant and you sort of segregate those two things. What is one assistant doing on the listing side? One is one doing on the buy side, or is one operations and one is transaction management? And I think a very highly productive agent with two support staff can still probably do 50 plus units a year without the need of actually having a full team that's going to take time away from the thing you're good at and the thing that you're actually best dollar producing at. That only makes sense if your goal is to create something so much bigger in the end that losing money in the short term is worth it for the longevity of the business.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point because it is, I think about the book by Dan Martell called Buy Back Your Time.
That's the one.
Yeah, it's so great. And I think he talked about, what did he say? The 10-80-10 rule where, somebody kind of does that 10% up front or you do the 10% up front, somebody else is doing 80% in the middle, and then you're doing the 10% again at the end.
Yep.
And I thought that was an interesting way to think about it. But I like the delineation that you speak of in regards to leverage versus, building a team and when is one or the other necessary. Because I don't think a lot of brokerages really train this or, sales teams really talk about, hey, how do you do it? Right. Well, what happens next? Who's the first hire, the second hire? What should they be doing? I know you have some really high standards for the agents and the people that work on your team. Tell us a little bit about now. You just recently started your own brokerage. So this is like the next, like you just don't stop, you're just, now it's the next thing.
I'm 45. I'm not even halfway through my life yet. Let's go.
Let's go. When they say, I just was reading the other day about how like that's really the big pivot point for most entrepreneurs is that in your 40s, you think about how much time you have behind you, how much you've learned. That's really the entrepreneurial journey in many senses starts there with great success. So tell us about Ten Hoeve Advisory. Tell us about the kind of agents that work there, your philosophy as an organization.
Yeah, so I think the philosophy that we've had within our own team, Ten Hoeve Advisory, which we operated under Keller Williams for the first 18 years of my career, is the same mentality that we have for Preve House, which is the brokerage that we launched. Keller Williams has been absolutely phenomenal for us. When I joined that brokerage was sort of at their infancy here in Monmouth County. They had just opened their first office back, what would you call that, 2006, 2007. And I loved the business model that Gary Keller laid out in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. I read the book first while I was getting my license and was just 100% bought into the business plan. And the people that I met there, the business we grew there, the friendships I have, all of it was phenomenal. We just kind of outgrew it. From the very beginning when I was an agent of one, just myself, I wasn't just DJ Ten Hoeve, the real estate agent. I actually created the team, even when it was just me, with the idea that this was going to be something bigger than me, even from the very beginning. And then my wife left her job. She came into the real estate business. And then from there and there on and there out, we built on top of it. But we left Keller just because we wanted to have creative control over what that experience was like. And we wanted to create an environment for, this is a top producer podcast, is we wanted to create a brokerage that really stood for something and differentiated what was being provided to people within the marketplace. The brokerage environment is largely valueless at this point, right? Most brokerages have kind of completely removed their branding and they don't stand for anything to anybody. They just have become, there's so little volume, there's so little units being squeezed through the pipe at this point. We just will take any agent we can possibly get because a little piece of a few transactions helps keep us afloat. But in doing that, they stand for nothing and there's no brand identity anymore. As a top producing agent and team, I didn't want to go to a brokerage where the brokerage didn't stand for anything and didn't help open doors for me. So we said, screw it. We're just going to create it for ourselves. So what Preve House is, and it sounds pretty elitist probably, and it's not meant to be that way, is we don't open up the brokerage to anybody who's under $10 million in production a year. And look, if you're in Naples or if you're in Boca or Palm Beach or other parts of the country where your break-in sales point is $5 million, that doesn't seem like much. But even in an elevated price point like Monmouth County, $10 million is a good amount of production. So out of 6,000 licensed agents in the Monmouth MLS, you're probably talking about fewer than 400, 500 people that are really qualified to join the brokerage. So what we created was a brokerage that really you have to be at a certain level of production to even join the brokerage. And then from there, It's about getting the best people in a room. So just unit production, volume production doesn't matter. Our two criteria are over $10 million in production per year consistently, and you're not a dick.
Yeah. That's it. That should be an easy one, that second one, right? Well, because you know what, it's a big point though, DJ, because when you do hire people, you can hire someone that's doing 20 million, $30 million a year, and they just drain the life out of
They're
you because
toxic.
of, yeah, and your team, they have the wrong
Yeah.
attitude. And so I think that's great. Sounds like you're building a phenomenal culture. And I think, a rising tide like lifts all ships to some
Yeah.
extent, right? So it's when you have it's the culture around you that really counts in many ways. When you're looking around the room and you're saying, "Wow, he just got that listing," or he just made that call, he booked that appointment." Seeing other people succeed. I always say other organizations, they have these invisible ceilings, right?
Yeah.
There's the top of the top. No one's done more, and there's a reason for that. So
And
I
that's
love.
how most of these top producers are, right? We're very small. So we're a brokerage of less than 12 people at this point, and we're doing that on purpose. We're growing very slow to make sure we have the right people. But the ones who are attracted to what we're building are the agent who's doing 12 to $20 million in production at a traditional brokerage, but they're the only person doing that. And everybody else is down production significantly from there. And they don't go to the office because the office doesn't give anything else to them. They're doing more production than the person running the office really has an idea of how to help them get further. And when they go to the office, they just kind of get picked apart by the people who want to learn from them, but nobody's pouring back into that agent. So they're on
Mhm.
this lonely island. And I think one of the cool things that I have from so many failures in building the business and the team we have is I can help you go from 12 million to 25 million by helping to teach you how to elevate your price point, how to elevate your branding, and how to maybe hire an assistant. Because most of these people have hit that cap you were just talking about, that they just can't get any further because there's no more hours left in the day. So that's a
Right.
really exciting part for me, is to be able to look at their business holistically and be like, you're a lot closer than you think you are to doubling your business. And it's just these couple little switches you need to flick to be able to get there.
Well,
So
and there's something to be said about, I've worked in environments where there's leaders that don't do what you're doing, they just manage and oversee. And then I've worked in environments where there are leaders that are literally on the ground doing the same exact job as you, plus they're recruiting and hiring and training and all these other things. So I think when I'm hearing you talk, when you say elevate, to be able to elevate your business, I do think that we need to treat employment similar to the way that we treat, $1 million if we had it in the bank account. You wouldn't just leave it invested in one stock and say, well, it's doing pretty good, it's all right. Every now and then you'd pick your head up, you look around, you figure out what other investments are out there to see if they could do better for you. And I think that's the purpose of exploring opportunities with different companies. And one of the things I try to encourage people to do every now and then is once a year, pick your head up, talk to 3 different brokerages, ask what they're doing, take notes, compare. What technologies are you using? What is your average producer doing? It's just one of the things I wish I did a little bit more in my business. When you think about the agents that are out there today, you think about the future of the market, and you just think about what you're doing today. Like every day, are you still making prospect calls? Like who are those people that you're reaching out as the top 1%, right? You're already doing more than most, but you're
yeah.
still picking up that phone every day for 2 hours to generate new business. Who are you calling? Who are you talking to? What does your clientele look like? Is there a certain way that you've really built that business?
So when I got into business, I really wanted to do luxury business, and I had no background in real estate. My background was in family-owned construction business and then sales that I learned through medical sales. But I knew from servicing really affluent, highly educated physician subspecialists in the space that I was selling in at that point, I knew I kind of had the chops to be able to do it. I just needed to learn the actual nuts and bolts of the real estate business. So from the very beginning, I was like, I want to service luxury clientele. But if you remember, I got my license in the beginning of 2008, which was right when everything crashed. And I had a really cool lesson that I got to learn, which was watching these luxury real estate agents that were dying. All they had was luxury business, and that market dried up completely. And they never serviced the $300,000 to $500,000 buyer at that point, who was the people who would keep the lights on when the luxury business shut down. So I said to myself really intentionally, I'm gonna build a business that can service the highest end clientele, but I'm gonna give that service to everybody, including the winter renter, because they're not expecting it. And when you give them that attention, it makes a tremendous response, reaction with them. And you never know who that person is connected to, their relative, their friend, somebody who owns a $3 to $5 million property. When you wow that one person, you never know what it connects you to. And that's honestly how I built my business, was just chasing every single piece of business I could, no matter how small it was, until I just stacked one win on top of another on top of another. So now my personal business is, yeah, predominantly luxury business. We did about 130 million in transactions last year, about 120 units. My personal production average is a little over $2 million. So a lot of my clientele that I'm servicing are sphere of influence referral, or past client referral. So not as many new clients permeating my personal business, because I have the group of people that I'm servicing and I have agents on the team that are able to help me support the newer business that's coming in. But I'll still go sit in open house. I'll still go take out a renter to go look at a property for one of my investors. The further I got out of production as I started growing the team, the more unhappy I was. And I think it was the more unrelatable I was to the people on the team as well. You have to make sure you're still in those trenches fighting on a daily basis, so that you can understand what the agents are facing in their transactions and trying to put deals together, and that the customer really understands. It's really hard to remove yourself from real estate transactions and be in active production and be relevant.
Yeah, that's so true. And as someone that took a 7-year hiatus from producing and just managed, I can speak to that specifically. I do think there's this relatability when you have someone that you're mentoring, DJ, that can look at you and say like, wow, look at you, like he's outworking me today. He's making more phone calls than I'm making, and I'm not even close to the top 1%. So I think it's inspiring to hear that, and to hear what the structure of your day looks like and how disciplined you are. When you think about the future of the real estate business, the New Jersey market, technology, what things come to mind for you as you're building for the future?
I'm very bullish on New Jersey's market. I think we're very, very fortunate that we don't have much land to build on. And I say that with an asterisk, because obviously the southwestern third of the state has plenty of land to build on. But when you're looking at New York still being the nexus for so many things in the country and in our metropolitan market, we sit right on the borderline of what's commutable to New York City. And that's why you start to see a pretty big differentiation between the market we're experiencing still in 2026 being dramatically a seller's market here in Monmouth County, to when you start breaking into Ocean County, it shifts pretty intensely very quickly, because you're just outside that commuting distance. So I see the pain that a lot of the other parts of the country are going through, as real estate agents are struggling to sell properties and sellers aren't getting their asking price. That's not our world. We have the complete opposite problem that we still have since COVID, which is we've got 40 buyers for every house and we can't figure out how to find a place for them, even looking at off-market inventory. So I don't see that changing anytime in the near future. Netflix is only going to help our situation. You look at the Arizona market, where Netflix's other headquarters is, that went up 61% in 5 years, their real estate values. Netflix is literally going to be 5 miles from my house here, right in the middle of our market. Whether or not celebrities and directors are going to move to this area, which I don't think is going to happen. I know that's like God, like blasphemy that I said that,
Mhm.
but there will be support staff and the people who work on the sound stages, and then the secondary and tertiary businesses that have to support them. All of those people have to move somewhere. It's going to bring more demand to the local community, and I think that will keep us in a seller's market for the foreseeable future, which is really tough for young buyers, because it's going to become even harder to get into this area. But I think the market for New Jersey is great. I think we haven't seen largely what's going to happen potentially with people moving out of Manhattan yet. With the election that happened, there's
Mhm.
a lot of wealth sitting in Manhattan that has been sort of on edge about the mayor getting elected and whether they're going to stay or whether they're going to leave. And again, I don't have an opinion one way or the other, but I feel that pressure is sort of like a king toes at the moment. And I think once some of those changes start hitting people's pocketbooks, there's a possibility that we see even more demand coming from the boroughs from that as well. So all those things I think spell a positive market for New Jersey. Um, the mansion tax, I think, is the biggest problem we have in Jersey, and one of the things I really wish would have been fought a little bit harder against, especially with the luxury market that I'm predominantly operating in, is that sliding scale graduated mansion tax now from
Yes.
1 to 3.5%. I mean, I've got clients who are selling $8.5 million vineyards that, outside of commissions, they're spending $500,000 in taxes just to sell the property, which it's really a shame. So I would hope that that gets reevaluated, which I don't think will change. I would hope
Right.
that nationally there's a reevaluation of the capital gains tax for
Mhm.
primary owners. not having it be $500,000 based on an average sales price of $400,000 when it was created. Like, okay, how
Yes.
about we
Time to
make
move
that
it
a
up.
million and a half dollar exemption at this point so people can actually sell and we bring some inventory to the market?
Yeah, it's interesting how you first of all, I'm curious a little, I have a couple more follow-up questions for you on Netflix and it's interesting that you looked at that Arizona market to see what it did out there. It was an interesting stat there, 60%. But it is really interesting when you think about just how the political environment and all of these kind of, economic factors really play into is somebody going to sell, right? Obviously, rates are moving in the right direction, which is nice to see. We just hit under 6, so we're seeing some great numbers in that space. But I think when you think about the taxes, I remember New York when they did the staggered mansion tax too. It's some of these, and then New York on top of it has the mortgage tax. Let's hope we never get a mortgage tax here in New Jersey. But if
Right.
you look at the amount of taxes people are paying just to sell, and now for people that don't know, the tax on the mansion tax now in New Jersey it's a buyer responsibility, correct?
It was. So for the last 20 years, it was a seller side closing cost that was predominantly paid for by the buyer. It was a 1% tax on the buyer for anything $1 million and above. So you bought it 999. There was no tax. No mansion tax. You closed at $1 million, it was $10,000. You closed at $2.2 million, it was $22,000. That just flipped this year, and now it's become a sliding scale seller responsibility.
Seller
You can get
responsibility.
it paid for by the buyer, but again, net, it doesn't make a difference. If the buyer is going to make you an offer that is 1% higher price and they're paying the 1% mansion tax, net to the seller, it's the same thing as 1% lower offer and the seller's got to pay the mansion tax, right? So,
Correct.
um, the really tough part is that it went from being 1% on everything over a million to now it's 1% between a million and 2 million. It's 2% between 2 million and 2.5. It's 2.5% between 2.5 and 3 million. It's 3% between 3 million and 3.5. And it's 3.5% for everything over $3.5 million. So you more than tripled this cost to somebody who has a $3.5 million property and above, which is unfortunately a pretty high percentage of the properties either along the beachfront and oceanfront areas
Yeah.
or in the luxury markets we operate. So it's not painful for everybody, but it's certainly painful for the client who just bought a house 8 months ago and paid the 1% mansion tax as the buyer and is now moving because they got reload and has to pay 2% or 3% mansion tax on the
Right.
exit, and they got hit both times.
Right. Yeah, it was interesting to me that it just kind of happened too. It was like it came
It
out and it
just
was
slid
it
in
was
the
in effect
DMs.
right away. Yeah, it was it was just in effect right away. I was like, wow, can you give people like a little bit of a, hey, this is going to be effective in 3 months. Like, let's get people out of here who've been wanting to leave or have, because when it dropped, it was if you weren't under contract, right? So there were active listings that all of a
Yeah.
sudden had to absorb that,
Yeah, it
extra
was when
money.
they announced it, it just came out kind of out of nowhere. It'd been sort of a rumbling for maybe 2 months or so preceding that, but it
Hmm.
happened. It said basically within the next 3 weeks, if you're not under contract, this is applicable to you. And if you're under contract by this deadline, as long as you close by November 15th, I think it was, you still have to pay it, but we hope to give you it back as a rebate. I still have clients that are in Florida. We're doing this now. This is almost the end of February, who still haven't gotten the rebates back for paying that mansion tax that they weren't responsible for. They're still
Wow.
waiting for $30,000 to come back to
Well, if it was the IRS, they'd say plus
them.
interest now that you
Don't bark up that tree.
right? I know. So just really quickly on Netflix, and then I want to hit you with a couple rapid fire questions. I think this has been
Yeah.
a great interview. So when you looked at the Arizona market and you saw that 60% increase, I think you said over 5 years. What do you happen to know what the radius was around? Like how far did that actually reach? Was it a 5 mile radius, 10 mile radius? Was it the county that saw the impact, or was it just the particular town?
Well, I thought I was smart for doing the research, but now I realize I didn't go deep enough with the data.
Well, because
No, I
you got
don't.
up and down this 36 corridor. I'm curious. I'm in
Yeah.
Ocean. I'm just curious
I don't
how.
know the specific math on that one, but now I want to go back and check it out. But my own personal feelings are, I think anything within a mile of Fort Monmouth is going to see a dramatic increase because if you think about the people that are creative types, right? And this is not trying to make gross generalizations, but generally people want to walk, they want to ride their bikes. However, they can sort of get out and about to get to work is preferable versus having to get into a car and then having to park. So if you think about anything that's on the Fort Monmouth campus versus anything that's within a short bike ride distance to it, I think is going to dramatically increase in value. So
Mhm.
you've got Parker's Creek, which is a townhouse complex that's on Fort Monmouth. I expect those places to become extremely desirable. We are going to represent another residential project that's going to be built on the fort called Barker's Circle that'll probably break ground in the next 6 months. It's the last residential piece on the fort to be built. I expect positives from that as well. And then, like, I live in Colts Neck, which is give or take maybe 6 or 7 miles from Fort Monmouth and where Netflix is. How much is that going to dramatically affect the value of our town? Bigger properties, bigger houses? Do you get some of the more executive people that don't want to live that close to work and they want to have a bigger spread? Maybe that causes more interest in buying in our town. But I think once you start getting probably more than 5 miles out from it, the effect you're going to have dissipates dramatically. And I think it's going to become much more concentric around that base. And I also think the commercial properties up and down 35 are going to be highly valuable because you're going to need sound production. You're going to need lens companies. You're going to need repair companies to fix the cameras, like craft services. How many restaurants are going to need to increase their production in order to be able to support all the production that's going to happen on these? And then there's a whole other part of this, which is a torch I'll carry another day, which is these townships are not thinking about how to help local property owners take advantage of the rental opportunity that's going to come from this. So if you'll forgive me, and you can edit this out if we've gone too long, but
No, love it. Want to
I've
hear it.
helped a couple, I've helped Netflix actually scout locations and land movies on a couple properties that I've either sold or I represent the owners as friends. And we've shot a couple movies. I was lucky enough to actually be in one of them with J-Lo that'll come out this coming summer. But I was just an
Amazing.
extra and I got to sort of witness how the whole thing happened. What I've learned is you've got celebrities like Adam Sandler who
Hmm.
will rent a house. When he was shooting Happy Gilmore up in North Jersey, he rented a house for a couple of months from a private residence and just kind of lived there. J-Lo's not that person. J-Lo only stays in five-star hotels. Well,
Hmm.
shocker, we don't have five-star hotels in Monmouth County because there's not that big of a tourism industry here. So they put her up in the Molly Pitcher Hotel, which nothing against the Molly Pitcher. It's far from a five-star hotel.
Right.
So she didn't stay there. She literally had her driver take her back to New York City every single night during the shoot.
Wow.
So think about that, right? If we want to have opportunities for some of these gorgeous houses that live along the river in Oceanport, Little Silver, Fairhaven, Rumson, Middletown, right now, all of those townships, including Colts Neck, have a rule where you can't rent for less than 6 months legally. You can't get a
Mm.
certificate of occupancy. So if I'm a homeowner and I get approached by an assistant for a celebrity that wants to rent my house out, I either have to do it on the QT, which is a huge risk, and I'm sure the celebrity wouldn't do it because of the risk and the liability, or I've got to go to these townships and have them amend their certificates of occupancy and rental rules. So I'm working with Colts Neck right now to become sort of the pilot program for this of I get it. The township doesn't want Airbnbs because we don't really want transient culture. We don't want people coming and going in these residential neighborhoods every single week or every couple of days. But what if instead we made it where it was a minimum of 21 days that somebody has to stay? And instead of charging a $100 certificate of occupancy fee, the town gets a percentage of what the actual rental income is for the property. So now it becomes a cost advantage or a potential profit margin for the town to make money. They're protecting their own residents. We're not letting Airbnbs take over suburban towns, and the homeowner has a chance to get a windfall from this too and go take a vacation for 4 weeks into Europe. Even what you're spending on your hotel is a fraction of what you're getting paid for the celebrity come rent your house out. So I think that's the next horizon of something that I'm really working on with a lot of the townships to create opportunities for local homeowners.
That's really really interesting, and I think if I'm just thinking through it, I think yeah, there's going to be a variety of income earners that are looking to probably live in all different areas here in Monmouth County. Some that might want to be very close to work, walkability, and others that want to be in more affluent neighborhoods, maybe the more of the executives. And yeah, that's a really interesting point. Like we don't really have the hotel accommodations that are needed for actors and actresses like that. And then you get the Eatontown Mall in 36 that's going to be expanding. So there's a lot to look forward to. It's how do you keep your finger on the pulse when it comes to the real estate market? Are there certain publications you read consistently? Is there any, like what's on your news feed that you pay attention to?
I'm not a huge reader. I read probably a dozen books a year, but by reading, I mean listen to them in the car. So thank God for Audible.
So
But
who
as
can
far
sit
as
and read anymore, right? It's like,
I can, it puts me to sleep. So I'll read the same page 25 days in a row to put myself to sleep. So reading just doesn't unfortunately work for me. But I watch Stage Runner, which is a great social media profile on Instagram that's following sort of the New Jersey film industry. So if you haven't followed them, really, really good one. I read NJ.com, AsburyParkPress.com. I just try to absorb as much content as I possibly can through social media that's educational. And
Mhm.
then I go back with a fine-tooth comb and make sure I weed out the bullshit. Because I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of people who have made careers out of talking about stuff they don't actually know what they're talking about. And it just becomes gossip and rumors. And in the position that we as real estate sit in, it's important to be a source of information for people, but it's important to be a source of real, actual, credible information because what we try to train our team on is to become the local economist. I don't want to have to call people in my sphere of influence and ask them if they have people they want to refer to me. I want to deliver value to them. And if I constantly have something of value that they're not thinking about as a way to make money or something to protect their investments, I don't ever need a reason to call somebody because I'm just coming from a place of value. But if you're not pressure checking that information to make sure you're giving real good insight that's factual, you can affect a lot of people's lives and a lot of people's finances in a negative way. And I think that a lot of people don't take that with enough gravitas.
Yeah, lot of knowledge out there, not a ton of wisdom, and you got to
Oh,
parse
that's a
through.
good one. I like
You
that.
you got to parse through. I love the local economist. That's great because when you're speaking to a realtor, I'm pretty sure probably the first question people are asking you is, "Oh, how's the market?" Right? And so
Yeah.
to be able to say with some statistics and some real information what it's like, I think that's a big. I was just talking to someone in our industry saying, just being, we have 100 different investors we work with. Trying to know the guidelines for everything is like it's a full-time job in and of itself. But I said to my team, we just need to be guideline gurus because there's all these different little things, and knowing them or not can be the difference between making a deal or educating people correctly.
Yeah.
So totally agree with that.
Why do we deserve the opportunity to be able to make, whether it's $10,000 on a transaction or a couple $100,000 on a transaction, if you don't think it's important enough for you to know your job that well?
Mhm.
That's, I mean, it's just respect for the craft. And I think that's something that your business is the same way. If you're in a service related industry, it's a craft. There's a very big difference between having your license and doing it the way that a professional does it. And I think in both of our businesses, and you've kind of already undergone the upheaval that a lot of our business is going through right now with weeding real estate agents out and weeding loan originators out with the tough market you guys have faced over the last 5 years, is that the expectation of a real estate agent in our business is so low because generally speaking, brokerages and agents themselves have not prided themselves on being not smart enough, but have not prided themselves on doing enough of the legwork and being technical experts to really help a customer, that the customer's experience and expectation is so low, and there's so much room to expose that and to exceed the person's expectations if you just put the work in.
Yeah. I think most people tend in sales tend to be probably the opposite of you in the sense where they're just extroverted. They could just go talk to people and things happen when you can do that a lot. But being a technician, I think you just said, of your industry, and when you think about people in sales and real estate are making what doctors and attorneys make, right? They're responsible for saving lives and for protecting people's lives. We have to come to work in the same way every day. Like we're going into 4 surgeries today. What do we need to
Yeah.
prepare for? What do we need to make happen? And treat it really like, really raise your standards. And I think it will convey to the rest of the market.
I
So,
also
so
think, if you mind holding that one, because I
no,
think
yeah,
this is one
please.
thing that people don't talk about is
Hmm.
you're making as much money as a doctor, a surgeon, attorneys, engineers, in some cases, professional athletes. You also need to treat yourself the way those people do from a recovery perspective, especially when you think about how much shit we take on from
Hmm.
other people's chaos, right? When we hire agents on the team, it's always like, do you have your house in order? Do you have your foundation in order? Because you can't pile other people's drama on top of a cracked foundation. It's all going to implode. But when we talk about top producing agents, like, are you eating properly? Are you going to the gym? Are you meditating? Are you journaling? Are you taking days for recovery? Are you planning your days off over the course of the year? Because this is a very easy business to burn out when you're doing that level of production. And there's no reason why you shouldn't be taking care of yourself the same way a professional athlete does.
Well, that's great. That's great. And it's great to hear it from a leadership level too, because I think that really sets the tone for your team. You know, some people have that perspective like, oh, just got to keep going. What are you taking days off? What are you doing? But really resting and recovering is a part of it's a part of the journey. It's a part of succeeding is making sure you're taking that step back, even if it's for a few days and you get to kind of think more strategically about your business. And so balance is it is important. It's got to be a part of the recipe. Thank you for the reminder because it's been about 4 months since I've been on a vacation. So I can feel it when I get to that level, but I'm the kind of person that's like, give me 3 or 4 days. If it's like seven, I almost feel like I
Uh,
lose momentum. I was in like my flow state and then I broke it, and it's hard to get
Go
back
away on a
into it, isn't
3 day
it?
weekend every 6 weeks. It feels like you went on vacation for a whole week. It's wild. It's
Yes.
enough, given how chaotic your world and my world are. 3 days is enough. And when you travel, all of a sudden the phone rings anyway, so you're still going to do more business.
Right. Exactly. It's just not that proactive, sit in front of the desk, do the
Right.
outbound stuff. Absolutely love that. Well, I'm sure so many of our listeners got a ton out of this today. Your success, your reputation, it's inspirational, DJ, and we really appreciate you coming on. I want to hit you with, I know you're not a huge reader, but you're a huge listener. So we just learned.
Yeah.
What's one book in the last 12 months that you've listened to that you think really contributed towards maybe a shift in your mindset or your business? Anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, people are probably sick of hearing me say all these books, but Unreasonable Hospitality, I read that book every single year, once a year. If you haven't read that book and you're in a service industry, you need to go read that book and you need to read it every year because it really opens your eyes up to how can I be delivering a unique experience to my customer, regardless of what their price point is, that will easily make me stand out and create a a group of raving fans to be able to come back and want to refer more business to me. So that one definitely. And then you raised the book, Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. The exercise in that book of figuring out your time audit and what are the things that are giving you energy versus taking energy and what are the things making you money versus non-dollar producing activities really helped me figure out where I needed leverage in my business. And it's something that I use as a tool every single time we have somebody on the team or somebody in the brokerage that's needing to break through a ceiling. I'll have them do that with me to figure out, okay, what are the tasks we're going to give off to somebody else that we're okay with being 80% done right? And what are the things we're keeping for ourselves so that we're passionate about what we do, but also making money doing the things we're spending our time on.
That's so huge. And it's like, who better to learn how to do those things from than someone that's done it themselves, right? I think I noticed that however you were kind of mentored and trained in this business, it really sticks with you. And sometimes you don't even realize like the limiting beliefs that are, surrounding them. But, just if I was in real estate and I was, following your lead, I think that's such a tremendous advantage. Now, when you're thinking about real estate in general, it's another rapid fire question. What do you think the biggest myth about success in real estate is that you'd like to bust today?
Ooh, that's a juicy one. What's the biggest real estate myth
About
um,
success, yeah.
about success? I don't know that it's a myth, but I think it's just become commonplace that people think you have to buy business. You have to
Mhm.
buy leads. You need to pay Zillow. You need to be in front of like Zillow and Trulia. Like I could not be as anti Zillow and Trulia as anybody out there. I don't think there's anybody more than me. And I built my business. I'll be very candid about this. I built my business in the beginning off of advertising with Zillow, but I was in a place where I didn't know anybody, in a business I didn't know anything about, in a career that I couldn't tell anyone I was a real estate agent, and I couldn't tell anyone in real estate that I had a primary career doing something else. So I
Hmm.
needed something to kind of get some air under the wings to get me up off the ground. And then thank goodness COVID came around, not for a lot of reasons, but
Right.
it made me cancel my contract with Zillow, which kind of had been a forlorn conclusion for a while. I needed to get rid of it. And thinking we were going to be out of business and I had to cut every expense got me to break that contract or kind of finish out our contract and stop and never reinvest. And that turning point for our business is huge because we went from probably 80% of our clientele being sourced by paid ads or paid leads, and 20% of our business being repeat clients, to 90% of our business being repeat clients and maybe 10% coming in cold. And the cold ones aren't even coming from paid ads, they're coming from open houses. So we just took that money and reinvested it into the people who already knew, liked, and trusted us and started doing client events, client appreciation, value for our clients. And I think that's the part, to answer your question in a not so short fashion, is You don't need a million people to follow you on Instagram to be successful.
Mm.
You need to be relevant. You need to drive engagement. And you could have 5 clients that you serviced in your first year in the business. If you go spend time with them and deliver value to them and stay close to those people and ask, how can I create more value for you so that you eventually going to want to refer business to me? You can build a really strong business. And it just takes a little while. Like people want to get into this business and they want to do 100 transactions their first year. It doesn't work that way. You can build a
Mhm.
business that does that on paid leads, but how many people have I seen do that have to break the whole business apart 3 or 4 years in because it
Yeah.
doesn't scale and it's broken and they've got the wrong people in the business. So yeah, I guess I would say grow slowly. I heard a really good quote this week, which is stay small enough, long enough, you'll be big enough soon enough.
Mm. I
I
love
was like,
that.
that one hit me really hard, especially with what we're growing at the brokerage. It's not about staying
Yes.
small for the sake of staying small, but small enough. Stay small enough to be authentic to who you are, and you'll build. And I
Yeah.
think that too many people want instant success, especially with how much of a highlight reel social media is.
Yes.
Nobody, nobody that's got a sustainable business did it overnight.
Very, very true. Such great advice. And I think the real estate industry in general has a lot of allure to it with, a lot of the reality shows and when you
Yeah.
see, how much somebody can make in a commission and it kind of looks fun and it's all pretty and so
You know,
there's
that's what caused me to get my real estate license.
was it what
Million
show
dollar
was it?
listing,
Was it
literally.
$1 Million Listing? I love
Like
that.
$1 million listing, California. It was like probably season 1 or season 2. I was watching the original guys, right? So it was Josh Flagg, Madison, and Chad, I think was his name. And I was watching this while working out in my basement. And
Hmm.
nothing against those guys, but I was like, shit, if these guys who seem like they're like half awake could do this,
Hmm.
this seems like it'd be really easy. It's not.
Yeah.
It's
You're
it's
like,
not
never
easy.
mind. Well,
Yeah.
thanks. Shout out to the all the real estate shows that got people interested because now we have DJ Ten Hoeve, and I'm sure
Oh
another
yeah. Yeah, I'm
I'm
sure they
sure
want that one on their credit list.
listen, the thing I'm very concerned about on the mortgage side of the business is like when somebody is who's not in this business closes their eyes and they think about like who's a banker, what do they do, what do they look
Yeah.
like? I don't even think they would know most people like what that profession looks like, what it involves, what we do every day. So there's not you think about the average age in both of our industries, but the fact that we have so little new people coming in on our side of the fence, it's a little bit scary. But I think that I think that sometimes people think it's a little easier too because they see those shows. So now you've
Yeah.
you've you've busted that myth as well. And then obviously for the agents out there that are listening that are doing the Zillow and the Trulia, I think the goal is like just don't forget about at some point you want to convert away from dependence on those things. You want to focus a little bit more on your client base. And that's just such a powerful reminder, I think, because we're
Yeah.
spending so many dollars over here. And it's like, what are you doing with all the opportunity you have already for those existing
Even with
customers?
teams, right? I mean, Zillow Flex, the percentages that Zillow wants in return for that, plus the monthly advertising fee you have, then you've got your agent that's got to split with you. I mean, the margin just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And it's no different than a drug, right? You get hooked on that, the ease of it and the fact that it's just showing up for you without having to do the work. If you're gonna do something like that, I think you have to set a realistic expectation for yourself from the outset of like, hey, I'm doing this intentionally and I'm giving myself 2 years or 3 years or whatever it is, and I'm gonna be done with this by that point because I just want this to be my launch pad. And you have to stick to that and get off of it because otherwise it just becomes, I mean, you see teams out there recruiting to this right now. They're like, hey, join my team. I got Zillow Flex and I've got a constant stream of leads coming in. Cool. What's your profitability? You might have closed 300 transactions that year, but were you profitable? Were you actually making
Mhm.
money? Does it even make sense to be on the team or to run the team? And I think, honestly, if there was one thing to kind of hold a light to, Nicole, and I'm sure this is this way in your business too, is how many top producing people in the real estate business have these really envious businesses from the outside that their house is a shit show behind the scenes?
Mhm. Right. Yes, 100%. Managed bankers like that, and sometimes they're the most productive somehow, some way. I'm like, still
Yeah.
still waiting to understand how to really read a tax return, but successful nonetheless. But no, it's interesting. It's perception isn't always reality, so you got to watch out for that. And one of my original mentors told me, he who owns the customer is king. I I recruit against, I recruit to banks that, put bankers inside of retail bank branches and say, here, catch all these referrals. They're all yours. Go get them. Or, companies that have JVs that are in place that are like, hey, we're just going to sit you in this real estate office and they're going to give you all their business. But I think, I've always been about, I think, organic growth, owning the customer, because at some point, to your point just now, Zillow will, that margin will keep compressing. The more and more they realize you're reliant on it and they're accounting for the majority of your business, the more and more they're going to take from you. Trust me. And you're just going to be kind of stuck there. So, great points. Last question here. What advice, because we do have people, obviously outside of real estate, people are just trying to achieve more. Maybe they're trying to open a business, have a business. What advice would you give to anyone who wants to build a thriving business today, regardless of industry? What are a couple things that you'd say as reminders to them?
So I think this kind of piggybacks on what Gary Vaynerchuk talks a lot about, which is the hustle culture of just like you've got a primary career and you want to do something else because you hate what you do for a living. You have a luxury that you have a job right now and you have all those hours from 5 o'clock in the evening, presuming you work 9 to 5, until the next morning when you go into work that you can build another business. I would say if you could start over again, whatever business you want to go into, go find someone who is absolutely crushing it, that you like who they are as a person, the way they built their business, what the business stands for in your marketplace, in your industry, and go work for free for a year.
Mm,
Just go and sit with them and be like, I'm here. I'm going to help you. I want to learn from you. I'm going to shadow you for an entire year. Don't pay me. I just want to learn. And you've got your
smart.
other career that you're able to survive off of. What you're going to learn in that 1 year would take you a decade to learn yourself.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. It sounds like most small businesses, you're literally probably unpaid for most of the time, and without the expert, the expert with you.
You're going to be
So
unpaid anyway in your first year. You might as well learn from somebody who's doing it the right way.
exactly. No, that's the truth. That's great advice. You gotta surround, and I think that's the amazing thing about podcasts and Audible books and this world we live in with all of this information. I think if you can cling on to a couple things here and there where you're getting that kind of refreshing information that's going to help you grow, is it's huge. So
And I think for high school kids, first of all, Ivy League graduate, my son is going to community college. So we couldn't have been on more opposite sides of the spectrum, right? I'm not
mhm.
necessarily as huge an advocate for higher education as you would think, given where I went to school. But if you're in high school right now, or if you're in college, you are given such an unbelievable time to be able to reevaluate the path you want to take to success. It's never been more accessible to be an entrepreneur or to go into a trade. I mean, when was it cool to be a plumber? And all of a sudden, plumbers who are now all these baby boomers, including my dad who ran a construction company, they're retiring and nobody wants to buy their businesses. Private
Mhm.
equity's onto something here, guys. They're going to come in, they're going to put five of these businesses together, they're going to consolidate them under one roof. No AI is taking over fixing your pipes yet. No AI is taking over doing electrician's business. So I'm really huge on go talk to as many people in your parents' circle as you possibly can when you're in high school, and just go shadow somebody for 2 days. Go shadow a real estate agent, go shadow a plumber, go shadow an electrician, somebody who runs a sprinkler business, somebody who works in Fortune 500. Go shadow Nicole. You have so much education that successful people are willing to just give to you for free so that you can figure out where you want to go in your life. Don't waste your high school and college years playing Fortnite and drinking. Go figure
Mhm.
out how you're going to go make your millions.
Yeah. So you don't waste a decade plus maybe getting into just something that you never even really wanted to be
And
in.
did
So
you did you graduate high school thinking you were going to be a mortgage originator?
yeah,
I
no,
didn't think
no.
I was going to be doing this.
Yeah, exactly right. No, we live in a really interesting time too, where, you're hearing all these. I just heard Elon Musk say the other day, like, don't even save for retirement. You're not going to need it. I hear people every day talking about, how necessary is college in this world. You see people that are, depending on what you're trying to do for a living, right? But you see people who are really embracing homeschool and they're like, hey, the second my kid's done with third grade, I don't got to wait a whole summer to get them into fourth. They're going into fourth and fifth. And so they're accelerating and getting out of school earlier. There's so much to stay ahead of. I just recorded a podcast episode, DJ, about we hear about IQ and EQ, right? Emotional intelligence and just intelligence, but AQ, adaptability, your adaptable intelligence. I think is really going to be one of the biggest predictors of success in the future as we move forward. How quick can we keep adapting with this ever-changing world and then learn, relearn, and unlearn? And I think the unlearning part is the hardest. The blueprint we had for ourselves, going to an Ivy League school and growing up in a certain area, experiencing life in a certain way, that's changing today. And so it's really interesting to be going through this time where we have to keep embracing new ideas, really thinking about the blueprint of the old. Is that really what it's going to be in the new day and age now with everything that's changing? So
I think
good
where you're
advice.
at in your career and where I am in my career, we don't have the luxury of saying, yeah, you know what, I'm good. I'm close enough to retirement that I'm not really going to adapt to this. We're not young enough. I'll speak for myself, maybe. We're not young enough that it's all we know because we're growing up in the midst of it. So we're kind of stuck in the middle and you have to adapt. Otherwise, you're just going to get left behind for sure.
Yeah, it's the truth. Well, guys, thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. DJ, thank you for bearing with us through the first round of technical difficulties and coming on and sharing your knowledge. I mean, I know as a host of a podcast, I tell everyone should have a podcast because I learned so much from everyone I have on, and I'm truly grateful for you taking the time today.
You had great questions, and I really appreciate the opportunity for me to be able to get some of the feelings I have about the business out there. And thank you to your audience.
Awesome. We'll see you again soon, DJ. And guys, please comment, share this episode, join us on the next podcast, and we'll see you soon.